Week in the stock markets. Let's hope it's more pleasant this week than last week. And I'll start it off with my expectations on NIO earnings, which are supposed to be today after closing. So it's here in Germany, will be in the night. I definitely will make a follow-up on how the earnings went. So make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you also get my follow-up video, because I cannot influence if you will see it on your YouTube start page or not. Anyways, yesterday I already shared with my patrons my estimates here, and let's quickly walk through what to expect, or what I am personally expecting from NIO earnings. First of all, we know already that NIO had its best quarters in terms of deliveries, more than 17,000 cars delivered, so that's more than they actually guided for. That's good news, but this news is already out there. But of course we can use that in order to calculate revenues. But then I had a real head scratcher there. And that has to do with BaaS, the new battery as a service business model that NIO has introduced. And if you're watching my videos since a couple of months now, then you know then when the BaaS was introduced that I was actually doing some fancy calculations around the topic, like, well, is this actually good or is it bad for the NIO business model? How much does it actually increase the total addressable market for NIO? But how much would they possibly lose in revenues, because they are giving kind of a discount in a way to the car buyers, because they don't have to purchase the batteries, right? And along with that, we had the recent news that battery as a service is getting accepted much more than, well, some of us have anticipated. So I think more than 40% take rate now. And then I was like, shit, this actually would possibly mean like a really big reduction in the revenues of NIO. But then I watched again the batteries as a service unveil event and found out this. So as you can see here, Li Bin, during this unveil event, he said that, the disruptive thing about BaaS is that they managed to separate the vehicle from the battery, not only in a physical term, but also on a financial and the accounting term. So basically they're issuing two different invoices. And now it was important to know like who is issuing those invoices and who actually receives the money. So we have this triangle here between NIO, the new battery asset management company, and the NIO user, the car buyer. Essentially what is happening is that the user buys the car from NIO. So NIO will make an invoice for the user about the purchase price of the car. That essentially also means that the car buyer only has to take out a loan for the purchase price for the car, not including the battery, so a quite lower sum, which is beneficial to the user. And then the important part here, the battery asset management company purchases batteries from NIO. So the second invoice that is actually given by NIO here is going to the battery asset management company. So that's not NIO, it's a company that NIO has actually invested in, CATL has invested in, a couple of other investors have invested in, 6 Chinese banks gave loans to this company, and it's actually free for other companies to join. So that means NIO in this regard gets the full price for the car and the battery that they are selling, despite the fact that the user is actually only purchasing the car and not the battery. So with that out of the way, I don't have to deduct the revenues for the batteries that have been purchased with the battery as a service, because it's actually revenue that NIO can book despite of this new business model innovation here, which is good, because now I can actually assume that NIO will report $933 million in vehicle sales based on the 17,353 cars delivered. And they already pointed out that it might be actually the same average sales price. They mentioned that in the NIO Q3 2020 earnings transcript. I already talked about the average sales prices outlook, and they said it's going to be similar to Q3. And I actually also checked this back. So the important part here to watch is always the ES8 share, because this is the most expensive car in NIO's lineup. And it has taken again 28% of the quarterly delivery in Q4. So that's quite similar to Q3. So basically we can assume that most likely the average sales prices will be similar. Now I have a new challenge here, because the US dollar is actually weakening. well, that's good for the emerging markets and their currencies, but it's possibly maybe bad for NIO earnings because I have now to calculate with an exchange rate of 6.5 just to be sure. In the Q3 earnings, it was actually 6.8 renminbi to US dollars. So I don't know if NIO is actually hedging the currency risk, but it may actually impact the US dollar revenue that they can actually report for the revenues. Then another big chunk to watch is the other services. So that's for the battery swapping fees that they're charging, any NIO service for which they, for instance, take a monthly subscription, anything that goes into NIO Live, like the e-commerce business, which I think is on the rise from what I've seen in the app. There's much more new products there and like higher sales prices of those products as well. So I expect those to increase, and I'm now calculating with 45 million US dollars, which will go into this segment, and that's a nice increase from the last time. I think it was around 38 million. On top of that, new revenue stream, which we already know they're gonna book in Q4 2020, which is about the carbon credits. And NIO said in the last earnings call that they're gonna book, and they already received 120 million RMB. So that's gonna start booking that one in Q4. I don't know if that's the only amount which they're gonna book, because technically with each new card that they're selling, they will just accumulate more of that. So basically they should be able to even have more of those credits already, but I could assume that they actually book them from time to time. And interestingly here, much in comparison to Tesla, or in contrast to Tesla, they're actually not including that in the vehicle margins. Instead, they book it towards the operational side, so it's going into the gross margin. So if I add up the vehicle sales, the other sales, and those carbon credit revenues, then I end up with 997 million US dollars, which is just a little bit shy of 1 billion in revenues, where I think many people are eyeing towards. But it's also a little bit more on a conservative side, to be honest. Yet, although it's conservative, it is, of course, beyond the guidance that NIO gave of up to 947.9 million US dollars. So that would definitely be a beat on the revenues already, which is great, but kind of anticipated right now. I see quite a bit speculation of NIO reporting 1 billion to 1.1 billion in revenues. In US dollar terms. I try to be more on the conservative side here, but I would say that this is definitely also possible, because I could imagine actually that the other services for business for NIO are actually higher than what I am assuming here. I could also assume that they could already sell more of the carbon credits as mentioned, and also the US dollar to CNY exchange rate may actually be better than what I am conservatively estimating here. So there might be a good reason why it could actually be well over over 1 billion US dollars. Then with the issue solved about how BAS revenues are actually calculated, the good thing is also when NIO is issuing an invoice for the batteries that they're actually selling to this battery asset management company, then they also have kind of the margins for that in their hands, because they get the cells from CATL delivered, and then they do the cell unpacking, and then they just sell it to this other company. So that means they can pretty well actually anticipate demand and actually also the margins along with that. And that gives me confidence that NIO is actually not reporting decreased margins, instead increased margins. And I did a little bit of complicated work of how with each new unit that they're selling on top of the current one, how that will increase their margins. Basically, I came up in the end that I think they will increase the margin from 14.48% to 15.81%. Well, don't count on me on this one. This is kind of quite hypothetical. What is interesting to see here is possibly an increase in the vehicle margin, and that's exempt of the carbon credit bills actually. Now, based on my bullish assumptions about NIO e-commerce, I also think they will actually be closer to breaking even on the service side. I also see that more and more people have actually to pay, for instance, for the battery swapping, as people are running out of the free tiers. So in total, I think this could be healthy for the operational margin, and I'm calculating here with 15.15% of operating margin compared to 12.94%, so also an increase here on the operational side of the business. I kept R&D and SG&A expenses similar to my last estimation, so 100 million R&D and 150 for SG&A. I could be well wrong on that and too bullish actually on the cost side. Maybe they had to spend more in order for the battery swapping, for instance, and the building of new sales stores all over the place. But maybe you remember this chart that I have shown before that, well, I think that actually the SG&A per car sold is declining, and I expect this trend actually to continue. So that's why I'm so bullish here on the cost side. Now to wrap things up, these are my estimations now with the revenues, with the cost of sales and with the gross margins and so on. And this would result in a loss of operations of minus 102 million and coming down to a net loss of 103 million, which is in contrast to the 154 million which they've lost in Q3 2020. I haven't really done earnings per share calculations because I'm not sure how NIO actually calculates that right now with the shares outstanding and dilution and options and so on. But I think my estimations here are quite a little bit more bullish actually than the Wall Street consensus in terms of the EPS. I think it's around minus $0.14 US per share. Mine would be below that, but I could definitely be wrong here on the cost side. But in that case, that would actually even mean a beat on the earnings per share, which would be definitely well perceived there. But I think right now, really, that doesn't matter so much, even if they miss the earnings per share, meaning that they are less cost effective and less profitable. Well, there are no profits yet for NIO. This is just one quarter in many to come, right? And NIO has lots of cash. There is no issue with that for now. They will turn a profit soon enough. You can watch my video where I think that in 2021, in Q4, they will actually report the first profit. So to wrap things up, what I will be looking for during the earnings call will be the topic of the factory. As I've shown here on the channel before, I think the rumors around the factory are becoming more and more close, that the recent agreement that they've signed with the Hefei local government is an indication that this new industrial park not only has a supplier base for NIO, but also having a factory for 300,000 cars. They could actually well announce that during the earnings call, which would be, I think, a surprise to some of the analysts. And then, there might also be a downside, maybe announce that they go away from the JAC-NIO partnership and that this new plant is entirely for NIO and they just want to replace that. So that would mean less capacity in total. But my best guess is still they keep with JAC-NIO plus the new factory with additional capacity up to 600,000 annual capacity. But that's just my guess. I could be really wrong on that. Carbon credits, we might hear more about how much they have still left and how they are accumulating more and how they are looking to book them in the future. Then globalization efforts, I don't think that NIO will announce anything during the earnings call about that. I think they want to stay tight-lipped and silent about that and just do the background work without all of the noise around it, and then they will announce it in time when they go to Norway and to USA and so on. Regarding stuff announced at NIO Day, like autonomy and solid state, I think for the solid state battery, they won't say anything more in the earnings call. And for autonomy, they may be talking a little bit more about the take rate of Navigate on Pilot, and maybe talk more about the actual investment that is going to happen with the cash they raised in order to build up the team for NIO and autonomy. And then the most important part, which will be the outlook for Q1. And I don't dare to make any assumptions there. What's that going to be like? But this will be the make or break actually also for the earnings in terms of how the stock price reacts to it. I think if the guidance is weak, we could certainly see that the investors are reacting negatively to the earnings despite maybe a revenue beat and an EPS beat. Who knows? Actually, as I mentioned all of the time, Q1 is weak. We have the Chinese New Year. It's cyclical industry. Q1 doesn't have many auto sales. So I was quite conservative for Q1 in the very beginning. Q1 is where you hear most of the FUD, like the fear, uncertainty, and doubt about the new car companies. And that's regularly when the stock prices are tanking and institutions are stealing your shares. So be careful about that, even if the guidance isn't too good about, let's say, February or March and the Q1 in total. That would be still fine for me. But what I'm hearing so far is that February has actually been better despite Chinese New Year than it was in the previous year. So maybe some hope there on this regard. And then last but not least, sharing this piece of information here, I already did a tweet about it, that I found some interesting details in the Tesla China business model registration. So in the latest filing of the Tesla business license in China, there is a new item in there, which it's in Chinese. It says like 新能源车换电. So that's referring to actually swapping or replacing energy. And I've heard Tesla officials saying that they're not planning to exchange energy, but that's definitely not referring to something like a supercharger or so on. And in my views, would actually allow Tesla to go into the business of sales of something like a battery swap station or something like that. So might be a little indicator here that Tesla is in China thinking about introducing battery swapping, maybe just for a China-specific model, not all of their models, but maybe just the one that is now designed by the Chinese local team. I've made videos on these thoughts so far. I know it's controversial. I know many Tesla stockholders don't like the idea of battery swapping, but I'm a little bit different on that. I am both NIO and Tesla shareholder in quite a big way, to be honest, and in the same way I do think battery swapping would also be beneficial to Tesla in China, and then they could even maybe join this NIO CATL battery asset management company, but that's a long shot, that's a moonshot. Just that it's now updated in the business license here doesn't mean that they're gonna do it, but it leaves the option for them. So that's it so far. See you with the recap of the NIO earnings. I don't know if I'm gonna do that right in the night or if I'm gonna do it tomorrow. Anyways, thanks. Please leave a quick like and see you then.